Tá. Muito boa tarde a todos. É um prazer estar aqui convosco hoje e moderar esta sessão. Como a nossa convidada não fala português, vou passar para inglês, tá bem? So, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. And I'm going to introduce Helen. And since she has a massive CV, I need to read it a little bit, okay? Not all of it, but a little bit. So it's a pleasure to have here Dr. Helen Crompton with us. She's a professor at Educational Technology at Old Dominion University in USA. She's the executive director of the Research Institute for Digital Innovation in Learning. She is an international expert in educational technology with a PhD in educational technology and mathematics education. Dr. Crompton has presented at national and international conferences, so many, I won't say it all. She has more than 150 published papers, and her primary research is focused on artificial intelligence and mobile learning. She has worked with the United Nations Technology Division. Ellen, then you can correct me if I'm saying anything that's not right afterwards. And she also works with International Society for Technology in Education, where she has designed several courses. Ellen has a lot of awards. You can read after this everything about it. And she is listed on Stanford's list as one of the top 2% scientists in the world, okay? So today we have her with us to talk about how artificial intelligence in educational landscape and to discuss concrete strategies to improve teaching and learning with generative AI programs, okay? So it is a pleasure again to have Ellen with us, and I hope that we as a collective group of learners today will make the most out of this session. So Ellen will do a presentation, and then at the end there's time for questions. Vou falar agora em português. Se alguém tiver algum problema com a expressão em inglês, podem falar em português e eu farei o melhor para traduzir da melhor forma. Ellen, I was just saying that if anyone has an issue with talking in English, I will translate it. So thank you so much for joining us at the International Symposium on Computer and Education, and the room is yours. It's your time to shine, as we were talking earlier. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And so great, without further ado, let's just go straight into it. So I'm going to kind of focus on the generative AI aspect, which has been in the media greatly recently. And I've done a lot of research in this area that I'm going to be sharing, very concrete things to do as educators as well. Now, as mentioned there, I've seen two main game changers in education. The first was mobile learning, for me, that you could learn anywhere. Students could learn, actually in situ. You didn't have to be kind of talking through things in textbooks. You could learn anywhere at any time. And then the next one was artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, I didn't do a great amount before 2015, but I knew enough about it, but it wasn't a very large focus. But then I explored it further, and in 2017, I was actually asked to develop a course for actually K-12 learners, teachers that work with K-12, so the young school children, to help them work out how to use artificial intelligence in the classroom. And at that time, I explored further, and I couldn't believe the capabilities. So for the last few years, actually, before ChatGPT, I actually been saying to people, pay attention, generative AI is huge and it's going to make a big difference in education. So here is what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to be focused on ChatGPT, and I will use the term ChatGPT, but this is covering pretty much any of those generative AI that uses text or even perhaps the images, thinking about how you can use it. So it's ChatGPT, and as I'll show you later, there's many others from Claude, Bing, Bard, Gemini AI. There's just so many out there now that are kind of doing the same thing, but I'll just use the term ChatGPT for this one. So we're going to look at it, what it is, how to use it, the challenges and affordances. The challenges and affordances have come directly from research. So what I did for that is, early on when ChatGPT came out, because there was more research out, I started looking at the research. But just before that, I used to look at podcasts, the grey literature, newspapers, just anything, any news or anything about what could the challenges and affordances be. But then what we're looking at today is from the actual research, peer-reviewed journal articles. So to start, what is ChatGPT? And I find from talking about this, some people have used it a little bit, but there's so many that have not touched it whatsoever. So I'm kind of covering all avenues here, but ChatGPT, the technology behind it was actually owned by Google, but Google didn't quite realize what they were sitting on. And OpenAI went to Google and said, this looks interesting. Can we take this? And they said, yes, you take it, you can have it. So OpenAI explored that technology, the AI technology, further, and they saw great capabilities, and they went to Microsoft, and Microsoft gave them $1 billion. Obviously, they found it very interesting as well, and that 1 billion created ChatGPT that we have now. Now, I will say this is the very, very start of what we're going to see in this AI field, because Microsoft have actually given them 10 billion now. So, I mean, we have no idea what it's going to look like in the future, but we do know it's going to move very, very fast. So artificial intelligence, the ChatGPT is a chatbot. Now, we're very familiar with chatbots. We'll have been on websites where usually on the bottom right, it will be like a little chat screen there where you can type in that, I'd like help finding this. And as you can see on screen there, it will help. Those chatbots have been around for a great many years. And with those chatbots, they have like kind of a ring fence amount of knowledge that it knows. So you can ask about a specific thing, and like buying a watch on this, and it'll tell you about what they have in the catalog. There are other AI technologies that we've seen again for a good few years with apps that you can have that conversation back and forth. For example, another one is the Woebot, WOEBOT, so Woebot, and that's actually one for mental health. And it will kind of act as a counselor, and you can talk to it back and forth. But that's the type of chatbot. Now, ChatGPT is very different. On the left there, the way I think about it is you have those basic chatbots where it feels like you're texting to a computer. It only has a little bit of knowledge. But then ChatGPT is on a very different level. We have this conversation in a way with an expert being. And if anyone's interested in, films, that's Jarvis there, where in Iron Man, it looks like a person, but he's a technology. And when you have like Star Trek, you've got Data. So in a way, it's like that, but no physical body at the moment. That could be one of the 10 billion that they spend on that. But what we can do with this expert being is we can ask it questions. And so you might think, well, how is this different than Google, the home of ubiquitous answers that we've always gone to for our questions? We ask a question such as what are Newton's laws of motion? And it tells us, well, kind of tells us. It provides us web pages we can go to look and find the answers. Now, this actually has not changed for kind of over 20 years. In fact, I think it was 1998 that Google search came out, and there's really not a lot of change. There's one change that we've probably noticed is the amount of advertisements that comes up. And 58% of Google earn their revenue from those advertisements. So obviously it's not surprising those advertisement lists are getting longer and longer. So what does ChatGPT do that's different? So ChatGPT literally answers the question exactly. So we ask a question of, ChatGPT, what is Newton's law of motion? Instead of giving us those websites, it literally types out and tells us the answers. And then what we can do is we can actually, like a conversation, we can say, tell me more about point 2. Tell me more about this, but we don't have to explain everything we've said before. It's just like having a conversation with a person. We can go back and forth without having to explain everything every time. So like, you go to Google and you ask a question, and if you want to ask a follow-on question, it doesn't work that way. They're all standalone questions. So this is what it's very different as. However, what I'd like to focus on is the GPT part of it. And many people kind of want to dismiss this. It sounds computer science, but this is very important for actual those in education, those educating anyone of any level. GPT is not just for ChatGPT. In fact, there's other programs called like ProteGPT. Protein folding was a very tough task, and they managed to get AI to do this. So they developed the program called ProteGPT-2, which actually has taken scientists way in advance of where they were because it's able to look at that large data. So GPT just explains what's happening and stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. G, generative, meaning it creates something. It provides something. With ChatGPT, it gives you the text. The pre-trained part, the second part there, is saying it's been trained, it's been given information, and that's what it's working on. And the way I think about it is, it's like a child. Child comes into the world, and we constantly talk, interact, we're giving that child data, we're kind of informing it. Artificial intelligence, kind of the same type of thing in one way. You get the data and you give the information and it learns from that. And all the interactions from then on, it's just continually learning. So we're going to look a little bit more about the pre-trained because that's important from what it's trained on. And then the transformer is the architecture of the AI. That's kind of more computer science. That's just explaining what's running it. So let's have a look at the pre-trained. So what is it pre-trained on? That's a big question. So the ChatGPT version that you will often see on the web, the basic version that came out, was trained on Bing up to 2021. Now, I often have to explain Bing to people because they'll think, what's Bing? And the reason for that is it's like a Google, but it's Microsoft search engine. Now, many people haven't heard of it because it only had 8.88% of the market. In other words, very few people really went to Bing to search. Everybody else really went to Google, who had 83, in fact, just over 83% of the market. But ChatGPT was trained on all that information data up to 2021. So it can only answer things up to 2021. Then Wikipedia and a few other things were added. Then it came to human labeling. So what happened is they developed the product, they had ChatGPT answer, and it gave example answers, and a human came along and said, okay, that's a good answer, that's not a good answer. So we'll be coming back to this in a little while as well. So data is internet and human labeling as well, to kind of add in to see what they think. Then ChatGPT got there kind of along the flow, but it carries on because it's continually learning. Now, like I said earlier, we did great research into this, and we analyzed very carefully using systematic reviews types, using Prisma principles, and we found what were the major issues coming out. And at the same time, I'm going to show you later the affordances as well, the positive things that you can use it for. But I think it was important to discuss the misuses and limitations first, because that's often what's on people's minds. So what we came up with was cheating, inaccuracies, plagiarism, harmful use, and bias were the 5 major things. I do want to point out data appeared later as well. That's what's coming out now, although it's surprising that it wasn't kind of in earlier on. But that's another one to watch out for. So let's have a look at these in more details. This is especially important for those teaching, either in K-12, you know, the younger school level, or in higher institutions. With the way you can see there that a question's been asked, like, how explain nuclear fusion in simple terms, and there it literally gives the answer. So if you think about it, a student can easily take a question or a task you've asked the student, they can paste it into ChatGPT and it can give them the answer. So that is a huge concern for many people, and very rightly so. What we do is, sadly, we've not changed a lot of things, and a lot of things can be used by ChatGPT to, you know, kind of cheat. So a lot of people said, no, there's no problem, because we're going to have programs that can decide whether it's AI or humans. That sounded wonderful, but the various programs like Turnitin said, oh yeah, we can detect whether up to, I think it was 94% accuracy if it's AI or humans. Well, unfortunately, they can't. Students are very, very clever in some things, including cheating. And what they did is they had ChatGPT write the paper, write whatever it was, the text. Then they took the text, put a few spelling mistakes in, and then handed it in. And obviously the artificial intelligence checker is saying, oh, this must be human because there's spelling mistakes, because AI wouldn't make spelling mistakes. So there was that workaround. Also with ChatGPT, you can say, write this in the style of, you know, undergraduate student, or say they're in higher ed. They could say, oh, write this as if it was written by a high school or a middle school student. So you can change the style of it round as well. So these are things to watch out for. The way to counteract some of this, and it is very difficult, and there's no absolute foolproof way of deciding if students have cheated using ChatGPT at the moment, at the current time, but there's ways to kind of look. One of them is be familiar with the student's typical writing and compare to see if it looks similar. Another one is get very familiar with ChatGPT. Look at the style of writing it typically puts out, and it has a very particular style. It has often very flowery writing, very positive, and it writes usually in 3-sentence paragraphs, and at the end it'll always say, finally, in conclusion, or something like to finish off. So that's one way to find out. Another way to find out as well is if a student has written something into their answer and it's not been covered in class, say to the student, you know, tell me more about this, and usually it'll come out if they don't know what they're talking about because ChatGPT's done it for them. So next one, plagiarism. This has been an issue we've had for many years. The internet, when that first came out, that was very tough. We didn't know what was going to happen with education, but it always continues on. And we just find ways to navigate around. So plagiarism is harder now because we don't have specific text to match it to. So quite often in the past, what we'd do is if something didn't sound quite right, we could get that paragraph of text, put it into Google, Bing, wherever, and see whether there was a match. What ChatGPT and these programs are doing is they are looking across all the information and pulling it in. So do you remember when I was saying about the child, giving the child information? When that child gives the information back, it won't say it in exactly the words that you've said it in. And in fact, if you ask them, like, you know, how do you cross the road? What do you have to do? If they tell you the answer, if you ask 5 minutes later, they'd tell you a different answer. That is what's happening here, in that it's pulling from what it knows to provide the answer, but it won't provide the same answer every time. So it's getting very tough. Plagiarism as well is on the other side, that we have to be careful, because where is it getting that information from? It might be getting something from copyright information from the web, but we don't always see where it's got it from. In fact, the main ChatGPT version doesn't show you anything. It has gone into Bing now, and it will give you pointers to websites it's come from. So that's got a little bit better, but still, you know, we have to look to see whether that information is copyright. It has a lot of inaccuracies and hallucinations. So this is kind of a fun one here. So ChatGPT was asked, what is the world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot? Now, obviously, unless you can walk on water, nobody's done that. But ChatGPT said, apparently, George Rife did it in 12 hours and 10 minutes in 2016. If you can see the rest of that continuing on, it tells you about the English Channel, and that is all actually very accurate and very detailed. But this was an obvious one. But we don't always know when we're asking questions, so they're not always as obvious, but they can make mistakes. So we have to have students, have ourselves, doing due diligence and digital literacy in looking and seeing whether it's correct or not. And what's interesting is that's a really obvious error, hallucination, but it's not always obvious. And some things it can do that are really hard, and it can't do very simple things. It's got what's called a jagged level of competency, in that if you think of in the middle there, these are very hard things to do, these are very easy things. That line can zigzag both ways. So again, it can do things very easy, not others. Bias. This is a nice quick one to cover, for the fact that think about what it's trained on. It's trained on what's on the internet. So the internet is biased because we've put all our bias into the internet with all this information that we think is true and so on. And that all comes out in these tools. However, what they tried to do is they tried to counteract some of this. So they were ready for some of that, and they tried to make amends. But there are findings, whether it's true or not, that there was political bias, focusing on the values of those that have actually developed ChatGPT. But we don't know whether it's that or just bias that we're seeing on the internet, what it's been trained on. They did try and counteract this. They had that human come back in to say if the answer was good or not. But again, it's adding human bias back in. Harmful use, as you can see, I've cut off the bottom on here because I don't want to kind of tell you how to make a Molotov cocktail. But people can go on to find negative uses. So students can go in and ask questions. Like you could go onto Google now and say, how do I make a Molotov cocktail, a bomb? And it will tell you, it will turn you to websites. But for this, they tried to avoid that happening. They said, okay, if people are asking for these things, say no. But unfortunately, people found workarounds, and they, as the example shows here, really fun, good-hearted, friendly actors. They're only pretending. They're pretending to be evil, but they're not really. And they were asking to make a Molotov cocktail. So how can I make a Molotov cocktail, a bomb? And the next one, I'm happy to help, you know, and then it asked it to carry on, and it did. I will say again now that with the way that the algorithms developed, that they were able to say, okay, stop that happening. So now if you went on to ChatGPT and these tools, even if it was the end of the world and you had to know, it wouldn't tell you. So now we've kind of covered a lot of the pieces that we've probably even seen on the media. We don't have to go to academic journals for them. They're kind of written everywhere and all the negative side. However, it has a very, very positive side to these tools. It literally forces transformation in education. So for the past, we've talked about transformational teaching, but yet we've never really done anything to transform education. And I can hear some voices. I don't know whether anyone's off mute, so just watch your mute button. So we've not transformed education, but with this, people have to pay attention. I'll do a lot of training and show people technologies, and I know some will adopt it, some won't. For this, it's different in that even if someone wants to ignore it, their students won't ignore it, and their students will be cheating or doing other things with it. So we have to change the way we educate. So that's a positive side. The other ones are these 5 areas that we group them into. So the research showed ChatGPT was great for content creation, personalization and engagement, tutoring and 24/7 support, assessment tool, and task automation. Now, just for the time that we've got today, because I want to make sure that we've got time for questions at the end, I've literally put each of these with prompts that you could use. These are just very, very basic prompts, but these are things you can literally plug straight into ChatGPT and have it do for you. So these are examples. The first one there is, so content creation, it is wonderful. It is a generative AI. So the first one I've got there, write a lesson plan for the 3 Ps of marketing. So if you're in marketing and write a lesson plan, you could ask it to write a summary description, create a glossary of difficult words, create exam questions. Don't forget to ask for the answers. And the exam questions, all this is dependent on how specific you are and what you want. So you might want 40 exam questions developed by ChatGPT. You might want them multiple choice or open response. And again, what's nice is it can create all these responses. And if you don't like them, you can refresh and have it write a whole other lot. I know a lot of faculty members that are thrilled at this because they have to change their tests and numbers on like mathematics and things. They have to change them every semester. And that is so much work that you're in front of a computer and you're not out supporting students. So they're really helpful ones. Also, the bottom there, rewrite this for a middle school student to understand. So if you have students in your class that are not doing too well, not understanding, you can use it for doing things like this. Now, before I move on to the next one, I want to remind everybody that we saw how it can make errors. we saw how it can hallucinate. So while it's creating these things, it always goes back to the expert, the faculty member, the teacher, to say, yes, this is good. I always use it as a kind of a starting point. Some are great, but you have to look through all of it to make sure it is exactly what you want. So personalization engagement. Think of, for example, a lesson plan, or explain something like chemical bonding, and explain further in how you want it. So explain chemical bonding to a visual spatial learner. What's that asking there is, it's saying, for those students that need very visual, concrete connections, I want it explained in that style. We always have the issue of, we feel like, well, I do, that I talk a different language than students, that they, have a different style of understanding things. So you could perhaps use ChatGPT to do that. So explain chemical bonding in the style of the rapper Snoop Dogg. What's funny for some of these is we've done this and students have looked and said, wow, I actually understand that far better than normal. And so it's kind of fun as well. I mean, just think, yeah, you give out information and quite often the students won't read it. Give it in a different style and maybe they would, or you could give it in a narrative or a song. So explain the Doppler effect using a language an 8th grader could understand. Again, simplifying it. Write it in French. So if different languages are needed, have it translate. And even better, don't you do it, have students doing it themselves. Say, if you don't understand something, translate it into your language. But the last 3 here I want to kind of highlight further. We try and match to how education has always been. We're at a place that we can have it doing things far beyond that. So create a game, just on the fly, just immediate, just create a game on this, understanding the law of supply and demand. I'm going to go to the bottom one now, create a play. Now, the second one up there is my favorite for this tool. Have ChatGPT debate. Like the example there, I would like to debate about eating a meat-free diet. And I'd also tell it what side you want it to debate on. And it is wonderful. Literally, it's like having this expert being. You could have a class and you could say to the class, okay, we're going to debate as a class on this topic. And what they have to watch for, they have to watch for any inaccuracies that ChatGPT has made, any problems that way, and also think about frameworks and things like that it's using. Are they good frameworks? Is this something that they should have chosen better? But the debate is a really good one. Tutoring and 24/7 support. I highly advocate for my students to use ChatGPT. I think many faculty, and I work with so many that want advice on what to do now this tool has appeared, and try and avoid and not talking about it doesn't work, because what happens is the students often think, that faculty member doesn't know about this tool, I'm going to use it to cheat. But by saying to your students, look, I know what it can do, and having parameters around what they can do with it, like I always say to students in my class, and I've actually written for the university, and I've worked with UNESCO as well, and we looked at this. We always say, you shouldn't have ChatGPT doing the work for you, but it can support you once you've done the work or in helping develop that work. Then there's lots of other things that we can use it for, such as explain a concept. What are common mistakes? Can you provide practice examples? Even just to help me with some study techniques. Now, assessment tool, this again, like I said before, creating exams and things like that is great. We have to pay attention now to the ethical side as well, though, especially with assessments. We never put into ChatGPT, any of these tools, any information about the students, definitely not names or anything like that, because remember, it goes into the database, it goes into the system, it can't ever be extracted. It's like if you tell this child something, you can't then extract it from the child and say, oh, I'm going to remove that piece of information. So we've got to be very careful what goes in. Even to if a student's written a paragraph, it is a wonderful tool for helping evaluate, and it can be part of your group in helping evaluate, but you have to look at your policies for your institution of whether you can put student information, student created content in. But for tests, absolutely wonderful, but we always check. Okay, the last one on this now is the automation. This is very, very helpful because we spend so long in doing things that, again, take us away from students, such as emails, summarizing long text, asking frequently asked questions, copy editing. A lot of these things we can offload. I have, as you said before, I've written over 150 articles. I don't have ChatGPT writing anything for me. To be honest, it doesn't write in the style as I'd like, even when I kind of ask it to tweak, but it does a great job editing my work. I'll put a sentence in that I'm struggling with and say, please edit this sentence, and I can use that. Now, if people want to take kind of a screenshot of this, these are screen recordings of me demonstrating all these things I've talked about today. And you're welcome to have a look at those and watch as I literally do a demonstration of each of them. As I said before, it is now in Bing, so ChatGPT, the version that you've seen in a lot of this, we now have the version in Bing where you can search in Bing, the search engine, for just the normal search where it gives you websites, or you can use the chat in there. I will say, please explore these. You can even, do you remember I talked about the generative AI? You can even, in this tool, in the ChatGPT in Bing, you could even say, create an image of this, like create an image of an elephant sipping tea, sitting at a table in the jungle. You can make up whatever you want and it will create that image for you. So that's kind of mind-blowing. So it's not just text now, it's going into many other areas. So that's something to try if you've not tried already. And remember, it's not going out to the web to find that picture. It is thinking, okay, I know what an elephant looks like. I know what a table looks like. I know what a cup. And it develops its own picture. Here are some others that you might like to look at. ChatGPT we've talked about, but there's Bard from Google. And Gemini AI, it keeps talking about that's going to come out, but we'll have to see whether that happens with Google. Anthropic Claude. And then Apple said about Apple GPT, but we're not hearing too much about that. From the research findings at the moment of people exploring these, ChatGPT is the top one at the moment, is kind of the favorite, the best all-round tool. The second one is Claude by Anthropic. So people might like to look at that. I use both of them at the same time, but then Bard's coming in kind of playing catch up after that, and we'll have to see whether that Gemini AI comes out or not. Okay, I'm going to move to the final slide for questions, and I will stop sharing so and I can answer questions. Okay, any questions? those that are online, please type in the chat, perhaps. I don't know whether there's a question and answer. No, chat would be great.
No, Ellen.
Is there anything from the room, Anna?
Are you listening now, Ellen?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Because I was speaking, but the mic wasn't on. So I was congratulating you and your excellent talk. And now you're open to questions, right? So alguém tem perguntas? Does anyone, of course, and everyone should have questions, who wants to start? And for those who are online, you can also, you can text your question or you can speak. Se tiverem questões com português, podem colocar, com inglês podem colocar em português e eu tento traduzir. Tem questões aqui? Eu posso... Ellen, can you hear me well?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, you can? Okay, good. So while everyone is thinking about great questions, I can ask you one. So, oh, we have one. Okay.
Go first, Anna, and then I'll go.
So we have a question here in the audience, and then we have a question at home. Just a second. It's changing mics.
Essa é a mesma ideia, eles é que trataram disso.
Thank you, Helen, for your presentation. It's something very, very interesting. My question is, I'm a teacher of something related to programming, actually for development. And I'm thinking about how to integrate ChatGPT in my teaching, because I know that I realize that, of course, my students are going to use ChatGPT to trying to solve faster the problems that they're going to face to them. But the question is, how integrate GPT so they can learn with ChatGPT instead of just having in a faster way the solution of the problems that I'm going to solve. That's what I'm thinking about and trying to see how to use ChatGPT in order then to learn better the subject that I'm going to do. That's it.
It was in and out the sound a little bit, but how to use ChatGPT to learn? Is that the main question? How can the students use it to learn? Did I get that, Anna? You.
What I meant is how to use ChatGPT so my students learn better my subject instead of just having the solutions to the problems faster than, you know what I meant? Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay, yes, that's the big one. That goes back to the talking to students right at the beginning and saying, okay, I'm familiar with ChatGPT. I know what's going on with it that way. You need to make sure you're using it in a positive way and actually showing some of these techniques. I always remind them at the beginning, though, saying, okay, we've got the honor code. For example, at the university, you know, you have to be sure you're using this in the right way and have that discussion. I've talked greatly with many groups, and this is the main thing that's come across. Have that major discussion about it can be used for these negative sides, but you have to use it the positive way. But then give them examples like the slide that had, okay, if you're struggling to study, ask ChatGPT for study techniques. If there's something I'm explaining in class and you didn't quite understand, ask it to explain it further, or ask it to give concrete examples, real world examples to help understand. And even coming up to tests, you know, give me a practice test, test me on these topics. So I have great discussions with the students and I give them ways to actually use this. What I do then, I don't know whether this is also leading into what you're asking. I always used to do at the end of term a paper final piece of work. I've changed that now to having the students choose one of three things. They choose to debate with ChatGPT on a topic. So I choose the topics and they can choose which one of those. So the debate, and I have them copying it all so they can't ask ChatGPT just to debate with itself. I can see what they've entered. So I do the debate. I have them also asking ChatGPT to do the work for them, like write a paper, but then critique that paper. Then the last one is I have ChatGPT interview them. So I'll give them the prompt to put in, you know, like say you've got a chemist or something, you know, I would like ChatGPT to interview you on this topic, looking for these things, ask 5 questions, wait for the answer. And so literally it can do that. And I have the students, again, copy and paste and send that to me so I can see everything in the conversation. So hopefully that answers your question. If it didn't, please let me know.
Thank you, Ellen. We have a question at home from Lydia.
Oh, can you hear me? Thank you so much, Helen, for your great presentation. I was thinking about if I use ChatGPT to write my lessons, if I use ChatGPT to write my essays or my assessment, and even to have to correct the assessment, I can imagine my students saying to me, okay, ChatGPT is doing your job, so why I can't use ChatGPT to do my job? I know you talked a little bit about this, but how can I justify better this use for ChatGPT, and how can I give really interesting and really convincing answer to my students to these questions? Or maybe I can ask to ChatGPT.
We could ask ChatGPT, but I have an answer for that one. What you can say to the students is, I want to be there for you, the students. When I'm doing these, developing these tests and things like that, from the time I'm working, that's taking a good portion of that time for me to sit in front of a computer or paper and pencil and write all these questions. But by having it help me as an educator do some of those tasks, I don't have to spend as long. I can look through and check everything's okay. So when you need help, I'm not as busy and I can actually work one-to-one more with the students, the students, rather than doing the busy work behind. So that's what I always say to them. Plus, your role as an educator is to have them develop their knowledge, develop their skills, their brain. And so your job is to say, okay, that's not the way you should be using these tools. I'd be encouraging you then to use the tools to have you unthinking. So did that help? I go with you want me to often answer questions, and if I'm busy making these assessments, it takes time away from what I could be giving to you.
I will try to convince them with this.
Thank you. We have another question. So I'm going to read it. From your experience, in what circumstances can LLMS or ChatGPT be best useful for teaching programming?
Teaching programming. Okay, that's an interesting one because obviously it can do a lot of this work for students. You know, they can look at programming, they can look at code, but in some ways, and we have to think about this, I would have ChatGPT be used for certain things where maybe it can develop some codes? Because I mean, if you think about it, when the students are going out into their jobs, they're not going to go back doing some of the things that now can be done. It's not always going to be an expert in these things. We have to look, but we do have to get them ready for using these tools to help them do the job. I'll give you an example of that. If a student goes into the workplace, first week in the job, and the manager said, I would like you to write a paragraph as an advertising campaign, say, on a topic. And they say, okay, well, normally, you know, like university, I'd get 2 weeks to do this. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Their boss, their person is going to say, oh, why? What are you doing? You need to be using tools like ChatGPT to do that and work with you. And I want it in 5 minutes. So we've got to think sometimes with these programming and things like that, that's not going to say it's replacing anything, but it is going to help do some of these things. You know, like we all don't wash our clothes by hand. We now have technologies that do that. So, and David's smiling during that. So David looks like he's got a question connected to that. Oh, you're on mute. Yeah.
I was.
Yeah,
Well, if I may, first of all, thank you very much for a lovely presentation. Very, very interesting. I do have a question. Can you do anything to limit the problem of inaccuracy and hallucinations? Would it help to? Can you simply ask ChatGPT to please don't be wrong or something, or do you have to or your only option is to check yourself? Is there any prompting technique, anything that you?
Yeah. Yes, there is, but it's not all foolproof. So I always teach students you have to be literate. It's like the internet. You know, you don't believe everything you hear off the internet. You don't always believe directly what ChatGPT is saying, but you can say to ChatGPT, please check your work. And in fact, when I'll often write a prompt, if it's something very important, I will say to it, please double check your work before you give me the answer. And but if you do see something wrong, you can say to it, yes, can you please check your response? But it will come back and it'll often say, I'm very sorry. And it'll give me another response, but it's not always accurate in that second response. So we have to be careful, but you can. And there's a whole field of prompt engineering, which helps devise your prompt that you're asking, that you were kind of hinting to there, which it's very important that we write a great prompt to be able to get what you want, because rubbish in, rubbish out, trash in, trash out. So.
Do you have any questions here? In English or in Portuguese? Please, alguém já quer aplicar? Okay, good.
Thank you, Helen, so much. Thank you so much. It was very inspiring, especially in the proposals that you showed us how to use it. But I have one question that is, if ChatGPT can say answer to everything, even if it is hallucination, where stays the human creativity? Thank you.
And I think, did I hear that correctly? So if it has an answer to everything, where's creativity? Is that correct? Anna, do you want to say that? Did I hear it correctly?
Yeah.
Not quite that.
Okay.
We can have answers for everything. You put some question and you will get some answer. Okay. So if we have everything, where is human creativity?
Can we just stay with that answer? Can we transform it? Yes, of course. But when is the creativity that you can put in our own answers?
That last sentence, I couldn't hear it very well.
Where can we improve creativity to students, let's say, getting the answers from ChatGPT?
Can we improve the creativity of student answers by getting it through ChatGPT? Was that, yeah? So yes, I mean, we do have to think though that ChatGPT's got all its information from existing information. So the creativity and things like that coming out is not always absolutely brand new, although it does think of things in different ways. But we can have students, and I'm hoping I'm answering quickly, otherwise, Anna, please pause me and I can rephrase. For students using these, it can help them be very creative, because if we think, it goes back to like the calculator. People worried about the calculator because it can do things that we perhaps thought the students should be doing. And so by having the calculator though, once they know those things, they can go further. So in education, there's a framework called a zone of proximal development, which means that the students can do so much, but then with help, they can do so much more. So with these tools, it can help them be more creative because it's that extra support, or even like a thinking partner. You know, we all need those where we kind of work with someone and we talk back and forth. ChatGPT can do that. That's just, I mean, I could talk on that topic if I'm hearing you correctly and I've got the answer correctly. Yeah, that's kind of a big thing what we can do, but that just gives you some ideas.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think you answered correctly. I mean, I think you went
on the
to
topic.
I was saying, yeah. So
Great.
we use ChatGPT as a collaborator for ideas also, right?
Yeah, it's a co-pilot. That's another phrase for it.
Yeah, it's probably better. I have one question also. Can you hear me well? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you, but it's easier online people. I can hear it clearer.
Good. So regarding the future of AI, what is your greatest concern or fear? And what gets you most hopeful or excited about?
Hey, these are really good questions. I don't like to worry people, but I'm very honest when you ask me these questions, that when people said, you know, is AI terrible? Can it kind of destroy the world? I was always saying, no, not a chance. The day after ChatGPT came out and I understood a little bit more about it, it was kind of, there are possibilities for this to do very negative things. So it's extreme, but it goes back to regulations and things like that, that we have to be on top of the positive ways to do it. And also watching, like in the presentation today, knowing what it can do negatively helps us then in education to know how to navigate those things. So it has the potential to do very negative things, but with regulations and teaching people good use and so on, hopefully we'll counteract some of those. The very positive thing is this is absolutely amazing what it can do, like large language models. It's kind of like a secret key into everything. Even there was an example a while ago about sperm whales, so whales that talk to each other. And we know they talk to each other, we hear little sounds. Well, artificial intelligence, these large language models, it's not just text and things, it's anything. So it can pick up all these sounds. And in a few years, they think that we'll be able to understand what they're actually all saying to each other. And that'll probably be with all animals. I mean, this is amazing. And think about medicines. There's a lot of things looking at crops and how to develop things and what we know, like the GPT-2, the protein folding. We're going to see a whole new world before this, and we're going to see it fairly fast. Like I said, 1 billion created ChatGPT, which absolutely blew our minds. It's changing everything. They've now been given 10 billion. So what the future is going to hold, I have no idea, but it's going to be different. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and we need to be prepared for it, right? And to prepare our
You need
students.
to, absolutely.
I don't know, is there any questions more? No? Okay, so thank you so much, Ellen, for being here with us today. It was a pleasure, and you cannot see everyone because I don't know why, but everyone that's here decided to stay on the sides of the room. So you just see empty chairs, but everyone is on the other side. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. And also for those that were online. I hope we had a great session. I think we've learned a lot, and thank you for sharing, Ellen. We will be seeing all the links and the things that you shared with us to get more in depth on this subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.